What if the real story between Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan didn't happen on stage, or in front of a red carpet, or under 100 cameras, but in a quiet room with one piano, one forgotten script, and a moment no one was ever meant to see? Tonight on Star Watch Now, we are not talking about scandals, shouting matches, or public drama. We are talking about something much rarer in the entertainment world. A calm, private interaction between two people who have carried the same story in their hearts for years, and chose, just for a few minutes, to be themselves, not Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan the headlines. This is a storytelling video, inspired by public moments, fan imagination, and the emotional connection so many people feel towards them. It is not an official record, but a gentle what if, a way of exploring the kind of quiet human interaction that cameras usually miss. It was the kind of room that only exists at the end of a long day, half tidy, half abandoned, floating somewhere between work and rest. The powerful studio lights had already been turned off, leaving only a few lamps casting soft pools of gold on the floor. Racks of clothes still stood against the wall, shadows of characters that no one was playing anymore. A script lay open on the table, as if someone had meant to read one more line, then simply stopped. Coffee cups, lipstick marks on the rim of one, a smudge of foundation on a tissue. Evidence that many people had been there, and yet, at that moment, it felt strangely empty. It was in this forgotten space, after the noise, after the shouting of instructions, after the last cut, that something delicate had room to breathe. In a place meant for rehearsed emotions, real ones slipped quietly into the cracks. No cheering fans, no flashing cameras, just the quiet hum of the air conditioner, the distant echo of footsteps in the corridor, and two people who were suddenly no longer part of a crowded set, but simply alone in the same air again. Some melodies cling to moments so tightly that hearing them again feels almost dangerous. The piano in the corner had nothing grand about it. A little out of tune, wood faintly scratched, keys polished by too many hands. Yet when his fingers finally touched the keys, the air changed. It was not the confident performance the world had once heard, layered with orchestration and applause. It was slower now, quieter, as if each note was being weighed before it was allowed to exist. The tune carried memories in its bones, rain-soaked sets, late-night rehearsals, laughter that never made it to broadcast. To everyone else, that song belonged to a drama, to a brand, to an era. To them, it belonged to long days spent side by side, learning how to breathe in the same rhythm. Perhaps it should have stayed in the past, locked safely inside old episodes and fan edits. But here it was again, fragile and bare, filling a nearly empty room. And when a second hand joined the melody, uncertain but determined, it was less about the music and more about what it quietly admitted. Some connections do not obey the timelines people write for them. The sentence did not arrive as a grand statement. It slipped out almost casually, somewhere between a half-laugh and a sigh. For years, every time they stood within arm's length of each other, the world demanded meaning. A glance became a theory. A shared stage became a symbol. Even silence was rewound, slowed down and dissected for clues. It was as if they were never allowed just to stand in the same space and exist without giving anyone a story to tell. So when he said, "We don't owe them a performance every time we breathe the same air," it was not defiance, but relief. It was the simple wish to stop translating every heartbeat into content. In that moment, they were not rejecting their audience or their past. They were protecting something smaller and more fragile, the right to have a conversation that belonged to them, not to hashtags, the right to look at each other and not wonder how it would look in a screenshot. For once, sharing the air did not have to mean sharing themselves with the world. It could just mean being present, fully, without turning their reality into another scene. The camera on the table was not part of any contract. It was the kind of thing staff used for fun, quick snapshots, Polaroids to stick on a notice board, little mementos of long days. In another universe, it would have captured them in a perfectly arranged pose. Shoulders angled, expressions rehearsed, a smile that fit neatly into a layout. Instead, the choice they made was different and quiet. No dramatic instruction, no 1, 2, 3, smile. Just a shared understanding. When the shutter clicked, it did not freeze two actors performing for a lens. It caught mid-laughter, slightly blurred, the exact second when they both turned to each other rather than to the camera. The kind of image that means almost nothing to outsiders, but everything to the people inside it. When the frame slid out and the colors slowly appeared, there was a softness in the way he tucked it between the pages of an old script. They were not hiding from the world out of shame. They were simply choosing not to give everything away. In an age where every moment is encouraged to become a post, they allowed this one to remain what it truly was, theirs. Not all goodbyes are loud, and not all promises are spoken like vows. Their conversation never used dramatic words, but every line carried weight. They spoke of distance not as scandal, but as a natural consequence of two lives pulled in different directions. Different sets, different scripts, different responsibilities. The world saw absence and rushed to fill the gaps with speculation. They, on the other hand, understood that not appearing side by side did not mean their shared history had dissolved. "I used to be afraid," he admitted, "that one day I'd see you and feel nothing. It was an honest fear, the kind that comes when time passes and memories blur at the edges." The reply was simple, that the story did not vanish just because the audience could no longer see it. Some relationships evolve into something quieter, less visible, yet no less real. Staying, in this sense, did not mean constant presence, constant photos, constant proof. It meant carrying each other kindly in the background of their lives, acknowledging what they had been without locking themselves inside it. Remaining connected, even when the industry preferred separation, was an act of quiet courage, not rebellion. Every fragile moment knows it must eventually make way for reality. The knock on the door was gentle, but it might as well have been a bell signaling the end of a dream. The bright corridor lights flooded in, washing away the soft shadows and the muted glow that had made the room feel like a world apart. Someone called their names with familiar professionalism. It was time to go. Instinctively, they straightened shoulders back, expressions collected, the well-practiced armor of public life sliding back into place. Yet something beneath that armor had shifted. The stiffness they carried into the room seemed to have melted around the edges. Their steps were still measured, but the distance between them felt less like a line and more like a choice. To anyone watching, it would have looked ordinary. Two stars leaving a set after a long day. No one would know that a song had been played, a photograph hidden, a few careful truths exchanged. That is how many important moments disappear into the flow of time, seen only by the people who lived them. As the door closed on the quiet room, it did not erase what had happened. It simply folded it gently into their shared past. For those of us watching from far away, these imagined fragments of time speak to something we rarely see on screen. Softness. Not the polished softness of a scripted scene, but the unmarketed kind, two people renegotiating what they mean to each other after the world has had its say. This moment matters not because it proves or disproves any rumor, but because it mirrors our own lives. Many of us know what it is to have a connection that outlives circumstances, to carry someone quietly in our hearts long after the crowds have moved on. We recognize the courage it takes to honor a shared past without exploiting it for attention. In a culture that rewards spectacle, there is something deeply moving about choosing privacy, about allowing important things to exist without evidence. When we listen to stories like this, we are not just thinking of them. We are remembering people we once laughed with, songs that still hurt a little, conversations that changed us even though no one else heard them. Ultimately, this moment matters because it reminds us that behind every headline are human beings learning, like the rest of us, how to hold on and let go with grace.